Welcome back to the Unraveler Show, everybody. I'm AlanBondar, your host, with my good friend Rick Welch here this week, joining me again as we continue our series, God in the Matrix, trying to define this God and how he works in his story. And Rick is going to continue this week trying to show us. Paul Washer, a pretty famous Reformed preacher, said this: the moment when you take your first step through the gates of hell, the only thing you will hear is all of creation standing to its feet and applauding and praising God because God has rid the earth of you. That's how not good you are. These are the kinds of things that I understood as a Christian. This is the teaching of the Bible in my mind, the way I understand it. We are nothing but maggots, no good, worthless sinners. And that was the Christianity I came out of. And perhaps that is the reason why God chose in the Old Covenant to do things like endorse rape, slavery, murder, pedophilia. And that's what we're dealing with in this series, trying to square how that God can be good in any way, shape, or form, how we can continue to submit to a God like that and square him with the Jesus of the New Covenant, since Jesus is God. And that is what Rick has been doing here. In my opinion, he's trying to climb out of a deep, deep hole. He may not see it that way, but I feel it to be a tremendous problem in Scripture. And so we're going to pick up with the word sophistry. And
yes.
I hope that triggers where we left off last time, because I know Rick is continuously trying to help us understand where he's coming from and how to square these things. So either sophistry or Dustin work, those are the key words. So Rick, I'm turning it over to you to pick up where you left off and go ahead and begin to explain further where you're coming from.
What a great introduction.
Yeah.
Paul Washer. Everybody's coming when you come into hell. Boy, oh boy. Where did that come from? So that's really where you came from? Like, you believe that way too?
So I didn't believe in hell per se when I left Christianity, because I had eliminated the doctrine of hell altogether. But the degrading aspect of being worthless, not good, that when you die, God, this will be the world applauding because God's gotten rid of somebody else that was not worthy. So the only way that you can have any worth or self-value, or you can't even have self-value, the only way you can have any worth or value whatsoever is through Jesus. He is your value. He is your worth. He is your standing before God. Without him, you're nothing. So even as a Christian, if you for 1 second even considered that Jesus wasn't your standing before God, you actually have to view yourself as worthless sinner that has no use in this world whatsoever. So that was what kept me always focused on Jesus. I had to be, because without him, I'm worthless. Without him, I'm useless. I'm a sinner. I'm this worm that's deserving nothing but eternal damnation, which, in my case ends up being annihilation, as at the end. But that to me was a big deal, because it meant I was missing out on eternal bliss. So you have to hold on to Jesus with everything you've got, because he is your only chance for eternal life with God. So that's a very deep teaching in the Reformed world. And I think it's the most inline teaching with the Bible, actually, that this is where you are without Christ. This is where you are with Christ. You're either all out or all in. Like it's that black and white. And so, obviously when I left Christianity, you take away the Jesus, and what am I left with? That degrading message. And took me years of therapy to get myself to a point where I actually feel valuable in and of myself. But I believe that's the teaching of Scripture. And I think it's one of the evils of Christianity in general, even though I do think there are people who don't apply that teaching and just try to ignore those parts of the Bible and try to make Christianity sound like it's just this wonderful thing when it's actually not. So I do struggle with it. And again, that is why we are here. We are discussing these things and hoping you can square some of these problems.
Yeah, because see, I don't believe that that's what the Scripture is really teaching at all. I don't think that it's trying to make you feel like a maggot or a worm. Like, I don't think it's, I think when you enter into the matrix of the Bible and you go through the different levels of mediation over time, sure. I mean, you can definitely get, like, in the New Testament, you can see, like, as a full preterist, we talk about that transition period, whether it's a 40 year, 38 year, whatever it may be, that there are certain aspects of whether you stay with the old covenant or you don't, and what that means. But as far as in the new covenant world, I don't see anyone as a maggot. I don't see anyone as, in that regard. I think that that was the beauty, in my opinion, of what the cross actually represented, which was it's never been about moral good or bad. It's never been about ethics. If it was, let me give you one really awful example. But you remember in Genesis, whenever Sodom and Gomorrah is about to come under judgment, and Abraham is begging, these men, like, or begging God at the time, like, if I can find 50 or 40 or 30 or 10 righteous men, will you not destroy it? And evidently there weren't even 10 in the city. And so when these men come in to get the family out, all of a sudden, like, this group of people come up and they want these angels, right? And they want to be able to have relations with them. And Lot, in this surprising turn of events, Lot offers his daughters, and he's like, here, take my daughters. Don't do this to them. And morally speaking, that's reprehensible to me. It's like, why would you, like, I would never offer my daughter to anybody. I'll blast you in the face with a gun, and I don't even have a gun, but if I did, well, I do now, but if I did, back then, like, I'm killing you. You're not taking my kid. I'm going down to the death, but Lot's offering his daughters. And so again, today, that's morally reprehensible. It's terrible. Yet when you get all the way down to Hebrews chapter 11, Lot is or actually, it's not Hebrews, it's Peter. Peter says it, that Lot is a righteous man, right? Lot is a righteous man. Lot offered his daughters. Now, of course, it didn't happen because it says that the angels struck those men, whatever. But still, it's not, I don't think that the Bible's saying, and then these angels got Lot off the hook. I don't think that's what's going on. It's not about ethics, okay? The position that Lot has with God is righteousness, but it's not because of anything that he really did. I mean, Lot didn't do anything, as far as I could read, that seemed very righteous. Now, if it was considered offering his daughters as righteousness, like that's righteousness because he offered his daughters, well, I'd have to take the Bible and throw it in the fire because that's reprehensible to me. You get it? So within the matrix of the Bible, depending on the time, in my opinion, God he is relating with humanity in that particular time frame, and he's working with those that are mediating the covenant at that time. And to look back at it now and judge it based on morality, to me, it's just a mistake, because it's not about morality. If it had been, then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is where it starts, right? To me, that's where the morality really begins. So when we try to point out at people and say, you're being bad or you're being good, that's not, to me, what the Bible is even describing. It's not talking about that. Even Jesus himself in the stories, whether you believe in Jesus or not, or you just want to read the stories about him, if it's myth to you, Jesus himself, whenever a man comes up to him and says, good teacher, and he interrupts him and he says, why do you call me good? There's none good but God. Now, you can turn that any which way you want. Is he saying, well, I'm God, so that's why you're calling me good? Or is he saying, don't call anybody that's man because, we're not good, God is good? Like, that kind of idea, when you read that verse, people will take that and it'll permeate an entire church. Like, a whole idea is like, well, nobody's good, so therefore we're all worms and maggots and scum. No, that's what we're really talking about. Jesus is making a statement that if you're going to measure something by good, we're going to call it God. This isn't about good or evil, really. Jesus is going to take upon himself all of that, and he's going to settle that problem in himself. And from there on out, that's why.
I'm sorry, Tom, you just said it wasn't about good or evil.
That's what I'm saying. It's not about.
So why did Jesus die for it? What was the point?
God.
What's that?
Because Jesus is God.
No, I understand that. But if it wasn't about good or evil morally, then what was the point of Jesus dying for that good and evil?
Because he was resolving it within himself. Remember you talking about that last week?
No, I guess what I'm asking is, what's there to resolve if it's not about that?
Okay. Do you understand? I don't think you understand what I mean. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
When mankind ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they became morally autonomous. That was what was going on. They were saying, the choices that I'm going to make are going to matter more than my relationship to you, God, because that's what they had prior to. They lost that. Now, God enters into that world. He told them not to do it, but they did it. So now God's entering into that world. Early on in Genesis, he does this great reset. We can argue whether it's good or bad. It doesn't matter. He only left 8, whether it was global or not. He only left 8. He's resetting. Later, he does less and less. He doesn't wipe out the entire planet. He does less and less as we go. We can argue morality all day long about whether that was right or wrong. It's not about right and wrong in that regard, okay? It's about God making a creation and relating to that creation, and that the creation did the thing that separated it from him, and how he can reconcile that. So God is working within himself to reconcile the things that he created back to himself. So that's what I see it as. If, in other words, mankind today, if you want to judge somebody based on morality today, if you look at a Christian and a person that they say, I'm saved, I'm a believer, right? So technically speaking, unless you're a certain sect of Christianity, you believe that your sins are forgiven. If you have a sin, you believe that you're forgiven of it, and that these sins are past, present, and future. Is that what you believed? Or did you believe that you had to constantly ask for forgiveness and that God was going to hold it against you forever?
Well, no, as a Christian, particularly a full preterist, when I got to that point, for certain, it secured in me that it didn't matter. All sins were covered, past, present, and future.
I would say that was true for Reformed theology too, because if you believe that you're sovereignly, it's grace, then it's grace.
It was, but it really solidified in me as a full preterist because I then equated the gospel with eschatology. They were one and the same for me. So I was no longer waiting for a redemption of the actual sin that we do in space and time, because even that had no consequence or bearing. It was all related to the eschatology of Christ bringing salvation to man. So anyway, that's a moot point. It doesn't matter.
Well, well, I mean, it's a good point actually. If you believe that your sins were forgiven, past, present, and future, then it doesn't matter about your morality at that level. Morality is of no consequence.
Well, no, but you're missing the point I'm making. Your morality is still the cause of why Jesus had to die and give you his righteousness.
Morality, the problem was the separation.
Sure, but what caused the separation?
The eating of the good and the evil.
Which is a morally apprehensible act, apparently.
And then he resolved it. That's my point. He resolved that point. It's not
the only reason Jesus had to die was to restore a relationship that was caused by what? My immorality.
Not your immorality.
Sure.
Mankind completely.
Sure, but you've heard that if you were the only person on the planet, Jesus would have died for you. Would you not believe that?
I mean, who knows? I guess.
I
guess so. It seems like that's
otherwise you're worshiping him for no reason. But I mean, sure. I mean, the whole idea is that.
Well, no, hold on. There's a lot of people in the world that people would argue: did he die for, or did he not? I mean,
no, I know. I understand the limited atonement argument. That isn't my point. My point is, you believe he died for your sins, right?
I believe that he died for the sins of all mankind, and I am included in that. Yes.
And that means then either he died for your sins specifically, or all mankind, every person is ultimately saved and goes to heaven or eternity or whatever you call it.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry. It broke up.
That's okay. Either Jesus died for your sins specifically and not Joe Schmo's sins, or he died for everyone's sins equally because they're all a part of mankind, and therefore there are no consequences for Joe Schmo because his sins are covered just as much as yours.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I call that's the universal atonement, not universalism, but the universal atonement. The only thing that I see future at this stage is the washing of the robes, and that's something that I've been studying on, for the past couple years lately, trying to understand exactly what that was. And so, yeah, I mean, fine, I agree with you. I mean, whether it's me or all of mankind, whatever.
Okay, so nobody faces any consequences anymore eternally for their immorality because that's all been covered and dealt with.
I don't, as far as like an eternal damnation, no, I don't think that there's any type of eternal damnation. The only thing that
eternal damnation, I mean punishment as in not going to live eternally with God, even. Just there can't be any consequences whatsoever.
The only thing that I can tell you, I don't know what goes beyond the physical flesh world. I just don't know what that is. I don't, because I don't see the new heaven and the new earth as this.
That's inconsequential to this point. I don't care what you think is the ultimate good that's going to happen to everybody. It'll all be the same regardless for whoever it is. My point is there are no consequences to the negative for anybody if Jesus did this for everybody.
Well, I guess you have to determine what negativity is. You'd have, that's what I'm trying to
Also
delineate here for you.
It doesn't matter. Like, regardless.
Yes, it does. No, it does matter, because you're putting a negativity to it.
That's fine. Even if you put a negativity to it, you put that same exact definition of how you define negative across the board. So I'm saying it's inconsequential to this point, regardless of how you define negative and how you define positive. All of that's not going to matter, because all of mankind, every single person, falls into that definition one way or the other.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Yeah,
so,
you can look at it that way.
Yeah. So regardless of how we ended up defining it, which to me is a waste of time, because the whole point is there are no consequences for anybody in whatever you define as negative, and everybody ends up in the positive, however you define that, because Jesus did it all for everybody.
So, no, that is not what I'm saying. So, negative meaning to me that beyond this flesh body, that there is nothing left. That's the negative to me. The positive to me is that I go on to whatever it may be, whatever it may be. If you think of it as energy and energy moving on forward, for me, it's going to God. And I see that as something that's covenantal, going to God. That's what I was talking about when I was saying the washing of the rope. So either you don't go anywhere, which would be the ultimate negative, or the positive would be that you go on beyond. That's it. I don't have any further, like, I don't hold this idea of the negativity meaning you're going to be in torture forever. That's all I was trying to say.
And that's fine. So now you've defined what you mean. That still hasn't changed the point I'm making. In your mind, the way you just described it to me about how Jesus did this covering for all mankind, and every person is dealt with for all the things they did because Jesus covered it all, that means nobody gets left behind in this no more existence thing. Everybody gets to live in the presence of God forever.
Except for the washing of the robes. That's what I was just talking about. The washing of the robes.
What does the washing of the robes have anything to do with the fact that Jesus actually atoned effectually for every person in mankind?
Because that is where, do you remember how I told you that in the original garden that I believe that people had free agency, that those two people had free agency? Okay. Remember that?
I remember you trying to argue that, yes.
Well, I'm just saying that, I mean, some people don't want to agree that it's free agency. I'm telling you that I think that it's free agency.
I think they were able to make the only decision that they were able to make, and that they desired to make. That decision was placed within them, and they didn't have an option. They had one choice.
I don't believe that. I disagree. I don't think
so you think you have the ability to choose against your greatest desire?
Yeah, we do it all the time, Alan.
No, we don't. We never do it. I can guarantee you right now, you've never made a decision against your greatest desire.
That's not true.
Absolutely, it is. Try me.
It's not true.
Give me an analogy give me an example that you didn't do that, and I'll show you how you're incorrect.
So the only way that you can do that is by taking away the twofold part of the human nature, which is what I'm talking about, where whenever I hear Christ telling me not to do something, that's now my greatest desire, so therefore I did it. I see what you're saying. My point is that it wasn't my great desire. That wasn't my great desire. It changed my mind. It changed me as I'm in the middle of the situation.
That's fine, but it's still your greatest desire. You will never do anything against your greatest desire. It's impossible. We can't. Even when I go to take a piss in a bathroom, I'm going to choose the urinal according to my greatest desire because I don't feel like sitting next to the stall, by the guy.
So you don't think the things that you wrestle with, that you've got something inside of you that wants to do something awful, and then you decide not to do it because of, I guess you're going to say that that's just the great desire. That was my great desire. Because
ultimately what we end up doing, we decide the thing that's going to harm us the least. So even though we may have two different decisions that we're turmoiling over, we're always going to make the one that's going to be the best for us, whichever one that may be. We have no option. We We are not built to self-destruct. We are built to always make the best possible decision. Even those who commit suicide, the reason they do it is because they truly believe life is better on the other side.
What do you mean?
People who are struggling.
They believe that death is better than being alive.
Correct. And so they make the decision according to what they think is better for them. It's always
their greatest desire is to be free from pain or whatever it may be.
Correct. Correct.
So I guess you would heap up the disciples in the same scenario. If they decided to go to their death by preaching the gospel, that was their greatest desire, was to die for that.
Correct. Assuming those guys actually existed and actually died according to what, we believe. But,
well, I'm just saying, I mean, that's how you would heap it up. So like if for me, for example, if somebody, a situation comes up and, I want to stomp somebody because frankly, I'm tired of hearing their mouth. And then this thing that permeates my heart that says, no, I want you to be patient. I want you to be kind and gentle. Then that you're saying is now become my greatest desire because I choose to do it.
It didn't even become your greatest desire. It just is your greatest desire because for you believe it's more beneficial for you in the long run to take that approach than the alternative. And the disciples dying, their approach would have been, hey, the life that I'm promised in Jesus far exceeds the desires I have for this life here. So yeah, I'm absolutely going to chase that. People die for all sorts of crazy reasons, but it's always based upon a belief system. They always are choosing what they want the most.
I mean,
there's just no way out of this, man. That's just the way we are. That's just humanity. It's impossible.
I'm struggling to see the paradigm because like in a situation where let's say that, I guess if I see somebody that's coming to harm my family, my greatest desire is to keep my family alive. So I'm willing to lay my life down regardless of what happens because I'm hoping that my family is saved. That's the great desire in that, but I'm saying it's like whenever it's for a perfect stranger, when those kind of things happen, then, I guess you can still say it's your great desire. That my biggest argument is that it wasn't in my heart to begin with. It became a part of my heart. It was foreign to me. And so
it's not what I'm not saying that doesn't mean that we have dialogue in our minds about things and that we have to struggle with what it is we're going to choose. What I'm saying is ultimately that struggle will definitively land where your greatest desire is.
Okay, that's fine. So I guess we would say that in that situation, my greatest desire would be to follow what I think Jesus is telling me to do.
That's why you do it. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you are genuinely thinking that Jesus's way is the best way. And that's why you follow it, because you think the reward is greater than the consequence.
I feel like I'm still like, to me, it feels incredibly experimental, at this stage of my life, because I'm beginning to, question just how far love actually goes. Like how deep does it actually go for people, being raised in a society that's incredibly fundamental. I mean, I was raised in areas where people made fun of homosexuality, or they wouldn't even give somebody like in the trans community the time of day or whatever it may be. And, something that I've been wrestling with is, looking at those people and realizing like, how deep does this love actually go? Maybe the minds from that fundamental upbringing that I've had for so long isn't the correct one. And I really don't understand just how deep it goes, and to be relational, what relational means. So that's something that, again, is because I'm wrestling with these words that, that are running through me, that are running through my mind, and this overwhelming feeling to be patient and to try to be gentle and have self-control. Ultimately speaking, where do I go and where do people go and all that? I think that the Bible makes it clear that the new covenant is here. And if it is, then, like, for example, let me give you one other example, something that I discovered the other day. I'm in the middle of a Revelation study, and I've always believed that we are the temple, like we were taught that we are the temple, we are the temple, we are the temple. But when you get to the new covenant world and you get to that final place, there's no temple there. It just says that God and Lamb are the temple of it, and it's like, that I really started realizing that it's God with us is the end goal. God in us is the end goal, it seems, of the Bible itself, is that God in us, the end. And then as far as after death, I don't know, man, maybe there is the third heaven thing. I don't know, but I don't see it. I don't point out people and say you're a maggot. All I say is that this is in that place, and I want to awaken that idea that God is in you, but not judge you by it. Like, that's not what I'm after, you know?
So, I mean, one of the concerns or issues I suppose I have with the approach that you're proposing here is, what is the place of calling people to faith in the new covenant if in fact there are no consequences to not believing?
I think it has to do with the way that you experience life now. You know, it's, to me, it's no different than the way that than a way that an atheist would look at their life. You know, an atheist without belief in it, they everything that they live today matters so much, and it does to me too. Like, I'm not looking for some eternal bliss thing that's going to make me happy eventually. I'm looking at life as an experience now, and live it to the, you know, and to awaken that in someone. For example, an atheist can go to somebody that has a drug addiction and be just as helpful as I am. Okay, like, they can go and they can really make big differences, and I say more power to you. I think it's wonderful. All I'm trying to do is to awaken what has happened within me. Is when I heard the words of Christ and I began to hear those things, the fruits of the Spirit that started to well up in me, it changed my life completely. And to me, it made my quality of life better. I wasn't, I guess, you know, the dark cloud that I always carried over my head for a long time didn't have to be there. It was about, you know, the way that I was actually filtering life and looking at life. So I see the words of Christ being that majestic, wonderful thing, especially when I talk about the Spirit. And when we talk about the wrestling of the flesh, it's just that thing in us that wants to destroy us. It's like we have two sides to us, you know. You've always seen those cartoons with the good angel and the bad angel, you know. But for me, it's telling people and awakening in the fact that the Spirit of God can change you from the inside out, and that it will eventually make its way out. It starts to germinate and it works its way out of you, to where you can, you know, be this and be, again, gentleness and kindness is something that anybody can have. But it was something that my upbringing and my life and the things that happened in my life didn't cultivate those things in me. I was the opposite. I was not gentle, and I was not kind, and I didn't have any self-control. I was a beast, you know. I was doing some stuff, but this gave me this fresh perspective on life, and made me care about people that were around me and about our society, and that I didn't want it. You know, I don't want to always, you know, everything's off in the future sometime, you know, like a way out. It's now, you know, he's with us now. That's the way, you know, that's the way I perceive it.
So essentially, from what I gathered from what you just said, is both atheists and theists can accomplish the same good in this world. So my question is, what is it about theism and God that makes you so attached to it? What do you want to hold on to it so bad for?
I never had any atheists that cared, you know, much about talking to me. It doesn't mean that there aren't any. I'm sure that there are. But it seemed like the people that I had met, you know, that were talking to me about the things that I was struggling with in my life, you know, it was that it doesn't have to be that way. And you know, I was working with them. That's the way that it happened for me, and it's my experience. It became a foundational thing in my life. And so, would it be true? Would this be true had I had an atheist come and tell me? Possibly. If they were aligned in the same way that Jesus's words were aligned, then yes, I guess the same outcome could happen. However,
that wasn't my question. No, that wasn't my question. It isn't whether or not you heard it from Jesus or from an atheist. That wasn't what I was suggesting. What I was asking is, if an atheist can do the same good in this world as a Christian or as a theist can, what is it about theism that's so attractive to you? And I'm going to pose this in a different question so that you can kind of answer it both ways. You and I both know that Christianity and religion in general, over the course of our history, has committed quite a number of atrocities. They're horrible.
Absolutely.
In fact,
Yes.
just going to the Old Testament God that we're looking at, one of the reasons we're even having this show is because of the atrocities committed by this God of slavery, rape, murder, pedophilia, like all these horrible things. That doesn't mean atheists or other versions of whatever belief systems there are haven't also committed atrocities. They sure have. This isn't about, well, Christianity's committed more, so let's get rid of it. That isn't where I'm going with this. The point is, if there is a system of thought that does in fact commit atrocities, and that system of thought is rooted in something that has no reason for belief other than, well, I just like it, or I just need it, or I just want it, or this seems to be the consequence. This seems to be what happened because I read some words on a page. But there was no, per your own admission, I have eliminated all the apologetic arguments for the existence of God. So we really have none other than, I feel this. I like this. This seems to be right. My feeling is, my opinion is, if we can get rid of a system of thought that has no bearing in truth, no bearing in reality, nothing that has any evidence to support it, if we can eliminate that system, that is one less set of atrocities that we have to worry about in this world. That doesn't mean these other systems don't commit them, as I said earlier, but it's one less system of atrocities that we don't have to deal with because no longer are people believing in a falsehood just because they have to fill the gap. I would rather say, and so I'm going to place myself in your shoes, Rick. I don't really, and I'm just going to play you for a second, if you don't mind. I'm going to still man you just because I think this is important.
Just make me look good when you do it.
Okay? I'll try. I'll try. But I've read these words of Jesus, but I'll be honest, there's no way I can possibly know that it was really a guy named Jesus. Probably if there was, he was just a man. There's no way I can know he was actually a deity. It also could have been aliens that wrote this thing. It could have been other humans that wrote it. It could have been an alien that played Jesus in the Bible and did it. It could have been the spaghetti monster that portrayed Jesus and made this happen. I literally have no way of absolutely knowing. I just got to believe this is true because I read these words and these events happen as a result of those words. And so I'm just continuing to believe it because it just feels right. Rather than saying, I guess I don't know. I really don't know. There seems to be a parallel here. I read these words and this thing happens. I can't explain it. So rather than trying to explain it, I'm just going to say, I don't know. All I know is that happened, this happened. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to all of a sudden jump from that to it must be God, it must be a savior, it must be Christ who died for the sins of the world. I just don't know. And be content with the answer of, I don't know, rather than jumping on board with the whole system of Christianity that has no proof or merit in this world with any justification of evidence whatsoever. There's nothing to support it. It's just faith, which is such an odd thing to base your entire life on rather than I don't know. And as uncomfortable as that is, I'm just going to settle there until I do know, because I'm not going to believe something until I'm confident I know the answer for sure. I guess that's what I'm suggesting to you is that's what I see you doing. And I wish that you would take that last step and say, I just don't know. Maybe that's where I should settle.
Yeah. And the reason that I don't is just because the only evidence that I offer is by the experiential, and it's not a proof for anyone. It can't be. If it was a proof for someone, then I guess we could test its theory and figure it out. But all I have is the experience in which I have. And so when I say that,
can we pause there for a second? Let me ask you: can experiences be trusted as evidence for if you go to court?
Only to the self. Only to the self, Alan. Only to the self. Can the experience
be tested? And experiences be trusted in the self? I know a lot of people that believe certain things and they were completely deceived, and they end up killing themselves because they thought Jim Jones was the right God or prophet.
Sure. Yeah, I know.
You can be completely genuine and be genuinely wrong.
No, I agree. I 100% agree with you that people can do that. I get it. I do.
Right. So how can you say,
so for me,
trust your own experience?
I trust my experience. Just again, look, is my experience of saying that when I feel an inner hatred towards somebody and something wrestles with me, and then I don't allow that to come out of me, that if I were going to base that in morality culturally, that's a good thing by our modern standards, that I'm not going to retaliate in some violent manner, unless it is to defend or for some reason or whatever it may be. Or if whatever it is, if I have this thing that's inside of me that says, we want to have self-control in this, wherever I don't want to have self-control in this, but this wrestling that I feel on the inside, that whenever I make those decisions, that to me, it seems like culturally speaking, that would be considered a good thing, And so if it is, that's why I don't understand why it's such a problem. Looking at Christianity as a whole, you and I stand on the same side. We see the atrocities that religions, including Christianity, have created. Those are the things that to me, that abhor me. I don't want anything to do with that. I want people to understand that there is a hope that you can have that's beyond your present circumstances, that you can look beyond it, and that by introducing it or by cultivating it or whatever, that the same thing that happened to me on the inside would happen to someone else, and then they would have that same sort of dynamic that's going on. And and that's where, like, I have, when I deal with particular aspects of me just as a person, because, by the way, I don't walk on water and I'm not perfect, right? So I mean, we're all
what?
I know it shocks you,
bro. All right, this show's over, man.
Next week,
I thought I was talking to Jesus here, man.
Next week, I will walk on my bathtub water on the show. Tune in to the Unraveler.
Or you can just put that Coke on the ground and walk on that. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be really good. I have gotten so addicted to these things, and I am the goat.
Maybe that's what it was, though. Maybe it was soda, because it fizzles, or maybe it makes it float. I mean, he turned water into blood. He could turn water into soda. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look. All I can do is just be honest with you. I mean, that's all I can do. I can't.
And I appreciate that, and I think you are honest. I never once have questioned your integrity. That is the one reason I continue to love you and have this show with you and talk with you, because I think you are honest. I don't think it's an issue of honesty. You know my position on this, Rick. It isn't honesty that I'm struggling with. I think you just continue to hold on to something because the brainwashing is deep with you, and there's just one level there that I think has not been removed, and I think eventually it will, but that's just my opinion. But I know,
dude, listen to me. Let me say this. I don't want it to be removed from me.
No,
man.
But that's because you're brainwashed. So
no, it's not. Like, I'm telling you, like,
look, here's my thing. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't want your experience to be removed. I don't want the hope you're talking about that you can offer people to be removed based on the experience you had. What I want removed is the idea that your experience means God exists and you want everybody to experience this God. And I'm saying, well, that seems like a really big leap. Why can't you just have an experience that you don't know why it happened or how it happened, and you're not 100% sure about it? You just know that you read these words, something happened to you, and you're like, this is cool. I want to give people hope that they could also have this experience. I can't explain it to anybody, but I'm not going to leap and just assume it's a God. I'm just going to say, this is my experience, and you could have it too, but I'm not going to tell you how to have it. I'm not going to tell you who does it for you, because I can't tell you that, because I honestly don't know. Like, that's what I'm trying to suggest to you is,
I understand you, dude. I read your book.
I know. That's why I'm asking you, why are you holding on to God when you don't have a reason to? Is one question.
Because you can't eliminate the foundation that comes from.
What foundation? You don't have a foundation. You don't even have an argument for the existence of God.
No, the foundation is personal. That's the part you're wrestling with me on. You're saying, Rick, you've got one thing inside of you that's keeping you, and it's because it's brainwashing.
I'm not wrestling with your personal experience. I've never once said these experiences you had aren't real. I'm saying you can't explain them, and you're leaping to God to explain them. And I'm saying, why can't you just say, I really don't know, but this happened and I can't explain it, and leave it at that?
Because it came from those words.
Which those words are attaching to a person that you can't prove is God or a deity. And also, if he was God, now you have this whole other problem with the Old Testament God, that now Jesus is also a rapist and a murderer and all these problems. And like, it's like the problems insurmount. Like, it's just constant, like this nonstop, like climb to try to defend a God for what purpose? And you don't even have any evidence whatsoever to substantiate your belief in God, other than, well, I had this experience and so I decided to think it was God. You, like, what other reason do you have than that? Honestly, dude, what other reason?
That's the experience, Alan. That is, you're defining it. Like, it's you, like, I've read all kinds of words. I've never had anything permeate me like this ever. Like, I've read all kinds of stuff, man. I love reading, but never hearing those. First, it was the hearing of the words and what those things meant, and then the reading of them later. And when you read them to yourself, you're basically just hearing them all over again. Nothing ever had that kind of power with me. Never. And so because it was so powerful to me, and because it still resides, it's happening right now. It's always happening because of that experience. And I say, okay, I attribute that to the Spirit of God. I attribute that to it because those very fruits that it's talking about are the things that are being produced in me. So therefore I can link it and I say, I agree with that. I agree with what that says. And so it becomes a very powerful foundation in a person. And so that's what's going on. So whenever that's why whenever people say to me, like, well, this other person believes in the flying spaghetti monster and that person experienced this and this and this, I don't argue it. I don't sit there and say that's not your experience, because, dude, I'm not in their head. I'm not in their life. I get it. But to me, what resonates with me are the fruits of the Spirit. That is a powerful thing.
If those who believe the flying spaghetti monster actually had an experience, and you think that could be a legitimate experience because maybe the flying spaghetti monster does exist, I can only gather that from what you just said. And you believe there could be multiple gods then, because the flying spaghetti monster could be one of them. I guess my question is, since none of you actually know, and you're all just guessing, and you're all just saying, well, I think it's this God, and I think it's that God, why can't all of you just say, we all had these really cool experiences, but we really don't know where it's coming from. So I'm just going to say, I don't know.
Because I'll say it like this. Whenever I look, one of the things that scripturally talks about is by their fruit you will know them. You've heard that before. So by their fruit you will know them. So if the flying spaghetti monster makes somebody a nice guy and that's all well and good, great. That's the experience that they have. I'm not going to negate it. But if they continuously tell me it's the flying spaghetti monster, that doesn't attribute well with me as far as the Spirit of God and what I'm experiencing. Do I negate their experience? No, I can't. I'm not in their head. But it doesn't jive. I've met other people in this world that have been, showing these fruits that I'm talking about, and it's by them that I'm able to know them and see them. Do you see what I mean? And so that's just, it's more confirmation. It's by saying confirmation, it's not proof necessarily. It's just by hearing that by their fruits you will know them, and then seeing that, it certainly does say, okay, I see that. I've seen that in people where I'm like, wow, that person just, exuded a ton of patience in that situation. And then afterward talking to them and saying, I commend you on the way that you behaved, and them saying, I'm just, I'm thankful to the Lord Jesus because he let me have those things. They don't see themselves as a maggot, and they don't see themselves as just like sloughing off what they did. They responded to the Spirit in that manner, and we just agreed, and it was a wonderful experience. But I mean, that's it. I mean, that's really it. It's a very powerful thing that's within me, and it's something that I don't want to shed. It's something that is really, it's incredibly important to me.
Well, I mean, and I get that people who are into heroin don't want to shed it either. So, I mean, that means nothing to me to say, well, I don't want to shed it, so therefore I think it's real. Like, that doesn't help me at all.
I know, but heroin destroys lives, Alan. I'm not destroying anybody's life.
I'm arguing Christianity destroys lives. So, I mean,
there is aspects of Christianity that absolutely decimate life,
well,
and I hate
when
it.
you're a heroin addict, hearing somebody say that, you don't care about that either. You think, oh, what are you talking about? My life is great. So
Mm-hmm.
only until you get on the outside of an addiction can you actually honestly see the trouble that it's caused you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're still in, and I'm out, and I'm saying, Rick, it's just causing you trouble, but you can't see it because you're still in the addiction, as I argue. So, so that's, that's
What can you define for me what trouble you see in me right now? Like what do you see in me
the only
as
thing
a
I see
problem?
in the only thing I see in you is
Yeah, yeah.
a leap of um, intellectual dishonesty, not because you're a dishonest person, but because, in my opinion, the brainwashing is causing it to leap from um, this happened, therefore God. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is causing you to hold on to something that is like a Santa Claus figure, where if we saw a child that was still believing in Santa Claus when they're 18 years old, and talking to him and living for him and worshiping him because he brings them presents, at some point we'd be like, maybe we should talk to this guy and help him realize that this isn't real life. Maybe he's not harming anybody, which is fine, but he's not living his best life, because rather than talking to an invisible friend, he's failing to see that he himself is the strength that he's always had. He himself is the real person that's bringing about the good in the world. He himself is the person that's bringing his own presence, so to speak, or his parents or whatever. But so to parallel that, what I'm saying is, when I look at you, I say, Rick, you're one of the coolest, most giving, best men I've ever met in my entire life. And I hope we're friends for life, because I just see so much in you that I value and treasure. And I wish in so many ways I could be like you. I think you're attributing these things to God, and you're robbing yourself of the praise you yourself should have. And I think that is a problem. I think you're degrading yourself by attributing praise to somebody that you deserve praise for.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that really is about a person's perspective, right? Because
Sure.
and I appreciate, I mean, if that's what you were saying to me, I really appreciate, and you have said things like that to me before, and I appreciate that. And I think you're wonderful too. You have a very, very gifted and brilliant mind. And you've come to this level, and I can see how much you care, not only about me, but about a lot of people. Like you really want them to get out of a system that's destroying them, and I get it. And so that's why I try to say, I guess if you see me as a person that's addicted to this, and that, I'm like a heroin addict, and says, no, everything's cool, man. I don't need to get out of it. Um, for me, I see a massive difference, honestly, in that form of addiction. I think everybody around them can see that they're destroying themselves, but those people that are in it, they can't see it, and I get that. But it's obvious that it's destroying them. For me, it's quite the opposite. I don't feel like it's destroying me. I'm not one of those people that run around. If I do something nice
I mean,
for
if I may,
somebody.
before you keep going, I'm sorry to interrupt because I want to keep going, but like, if I may, like, okay, so in some Christian scenarios, I would parallel them to heroin. In your particular scenario, I might compare you to smoking, because it's not like the degree of heroin where it's destroying you, but I do think it's blinding you from health issues, so to speak. So so you know what I'm saying? Like there are degrees of addictions, and I'm not trying to say you're the heroin addict in this scenario. I just was trying to draw a parallel to be extreme, but in your scenario, you're the smoker. Okay, can we just so think of it like that instead of the heroin addict?
Okay, yeah, yeah. So it calms me down. It's just hurting me. It's not hurting anybody else. Like that kind of a thing. Yeah,
Right.
that's fair. That's fair. And so basically, I'm just for you, I'm a Christian smoker, and the only one that's getting hurt is me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm good with it. I mean, and I'm good with it.
Sure. But I'm not
I
good with
mean,
it
we're at that. I understand. I understand
because
you,
you're my
Bob.
friends and I
I
care.
understand.
So, it's the same reason why you have given me all these stories about all these people you helped. Why did you do that? Because you
Hmm.
cared. They didn't care about themselves in those moments. You cared for them.
Hmm.
We do things like this because we care and want to help people see reality for what it is, because they're trapped in something they can't see for themselves. If there were
Yeah,
no people on this planet to do that, we'd be screwed as a human race. That's what
no, I
humanism
know.
is, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's why I say, like, I know that people who are atheism is not a belief system. So people who just have an absence
Thank
of
you.
belief.
I love you. I'm so tired of arguing that with people. Thank you. Good
It's not. I
God.
mean, it's just
Thank
it's
you.
not.
Just thank you for being
You're
honest.
welcome. It's
Appreciate
not a
that.
belief system, but what I'm saying is that people that go around with the absence of a belief in God can be very kind and genuine and helpful. And like I said before, I say all power to them. That wasn't my experience, during my time. I wasn't one of those good, awesome atheists. I was quite the opposite. But that's why I think when I heard those words and they were so, incredible to me, and my life began to change, and that it just remains such a powerful thing. Had I learned that as an atheist and had these same experiences in my heart, maybe Alan, but it's not my experience. And so
Yeah,
I
no,
can't,
sure.
I
So,
feel like I'm betraying myself by saying, like, any other. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's like a betrayal of a
well, no, I
self.
totally get that. I mean, I was a Christian too, so I remember. Trust me, dude. I get it. Like when I was where you were, there's no way in hell I could have said, "Let me think about becoming an atheist," because it doesn't work like that. Let me return us to the beginning of the conversation. We always choose according to our greatest desires. There's no way in hell today, based on where your thought is, that you could possibly say, "You know what? I'm just going to go against everything I believe and going to go with Alan and become an atheist." It's not going to happen. That's why I
Yeah.
have told you, and that's why I wrote the book the way I did, because I am absolutely convinced the only way a person will change their thought from being a Christian to a non-Christian or being a theist to an atheist is not by arguments, not by strong arming them. It's going to be by removing the brainwashing so that they get to a point where they themselves now are convinced that there's no God. Because until then, you'll never make that decision because you can't. It's impossible. You
Yeah.
can never. Faith isn't a choice. Belief isn't. You don't just say, I think today I'm going to try being an atheist. That doesn't work. You can't do that.
Right.
Belief isn't something you just muster up in you. It's either is or it isn't. You're convinced by something. That's it. Period. So my question for you is when, if you remind me and everybody, I suppose, when is it that you had your first church experience where you started to see things in the light of God?
Well, I was introduced to,
and I'm talking age, if you don't mind. That's what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, I was introduced to Christianity at the age of 10.
Okay.
And so I was young, but I didn't have what I'm talking about right now until I was in my 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's whenever I really had my where it was like this thing that permeated me from the inside out, and it began working its way through me. But I was introduced to Christianity at the age of 10.
Sure. But to my point, and I wrote about this in my book, like that is a crucial fact, like factor here in this situation, because even though you may have been raised as an atheist, age 10, dude, so impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no doubt in my mind that your brainwashing began then.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt whatsoever. And that stuck with you, man. However,
I figured that much. I figured that much from your book. Like I picked up on that too, because you wrote about that pretty extensively.
I'm willing to bet that if the first encounter you ever had was at age 40, it may not have took, but you started at age 10, and that stuff sticks, man. So it's just the way it is, man. And there's no way around the fact that something permeated that skull of yours at age 10 when you were one of the most impressionable kids. You know what I mean? That's just where you were. So it's very likely that a lot of that impacts how you are filtering your story about the words of Jesus and the experiences you had. I am not opposed to anybody else on the planet having the exact same experiences you have by reading the words of Jesus and them impacting the person and them going out and doing all the good that you did in the world. Fine. Speak the truth. I read these words of Jesus. They caused me to act a certain way. Those actions produce certain results. Wonderful. Does that mean God exists? The answer
Does he?
The answer is you don't know. And that's the point I'm making. You don't know. All you know is there is a parallel from this experience of reading to this experience of acting. but there's nothing beyond that you can explain. In fact, you can't even explain why that worked. In fact, you haven't even tested it, as you've expressed earlier in a previous episode, and nor has anybody else followed the exact same thing with you. Like, you haven't tested with other people. Like, gather 50 people and say, hey, let's run a test. Read these words, do what you think they're going to do, and let's see what your results are. But then even if they're all the same exact results, all that tells us is that whoever wrote the words on that page about the actions of Jesus, because again, this isn't Jesus writing it. This is somebody recording the words of Jesus. So whoever wrote these words is what impacted you. And maybe they had the skill set of a mentalist, and they wrote it in such a way that was going to cause people to act and do so amazing things. And you can have this result happen 300 times over, and it would be amazing. You'd still have to be able to demonstrate that there is some way to get from that to God. And I'm saying you don't have that. All you have is, I don't know.
Okay, so you said in order to demonstrate. So it's you and I that are having this conversation, but who am I demonstrating this to? Like, what? Again, I keep talking about this. Yeah, well, that's when you begin. So talking about a mentalist and talking about, like, let's say that some session, like, hypnotizes me and does something. You've heard of people like hypnotizing people to quit smoking. There's another quit smoking thing, right? And so it like changes their brain.
Sure.
So I've looked at this too. I've thought about it, like, well, what was it about the words of Jesus that were so compelling to me that it began to change my life, but it's whenever they started working on their own rather than it just being me conjuring it. Like, I would read the things and think about it. It's whenever those words take root and start working on their own that it becomes so personal. It's such a personal thing. And so that's why relationship, that's why we use the words relationship, because it is literally, it's a mind of its own. It's doing this, with inside you. So whenever I use that as my, like, that's all the proof I've got, it's horrible because I can't prove it. It's terrible. I hate it. It's like, how many times have you ever felt this way, Alan? Like, I wish I could take the top off my head and put you in my head so you could just think with me for a few minutes and then we wouldn't have to describe this. It's like many times I've wanted to just get inside your head. Like,
bro,
I wish I could get over there in your head.
If I could get the world to just get in my head for just 3 minutes to see how much I lived for Jesus for 40 years of my life so that they stopped telling me I wasn't actually a Christian, bro, yeah. Believe me, that would be the first thing I would do because I get tiresome of that garbage.
A friend of ours, recently left the faith and he's taken a few hits, and to me, it's just disgusting. I can't stand it, the way people treat others. They're grown people that are making decisions, but what's going on is there's this deep inside their heart, whoever they are, these people that are lashing out, man, they're probably closer to leaving the faith than anybody. Honestly, I feel like they're on shaky ground. People that are lashing out are on shaky ground. That's your audience, Alan.
No, you're right. They don't know how to react to this because they're angry. Like, they're like, what's going on here? Their faith is shook, and you're right. I agree.
Yeah, and when that happens, they're the ones that are on shaky ground. And if you can't find, like, to me, that's, it's not any kind of evidence for you, but it's one of those things for me. It's like, I don't have that feel. Like, I love him just as much now as I did before. That hasn't changed, and I've let him know it. And I'm not worried about what other Christians think in regard to that. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I'm going to love pretty much everybody. That's what I'm working on. That's what I feel. But anyway, well,
honestly, I would, in my opinion, from what I know of you, I would rather you start your own fucking thing called Rickianism, and
we did. It's called Welchianism.
Welchianism. I love it. I would much faster become a follower of Welchianism than Christianity, Jesusism, whatever you call it, any day of the week. Because, bro, number one, there is zero reason whatsoever to believe a God exists. There's no evidence for it whatsoever. We all know that. All we have is personal experience that says, hey, I experienced something, but I can't explain it. I'm just going to choose God as the answer because that's what I was told exists. There is no reason for it other than I just don't know. Leave it at that. But you exist. You I've met. You I know is a good person. You I know have put effort into people. You I know pour into people. You I know have made a difference in people's lives. You are a person I would rather be like than Jesus any day of the week, because if he is God, there's no way in hell I would worship him because of who he was in the old covenant. That's my take on it. And my God, dude, I would get get rid of all religions and make the world follow Rick Welch if that would do the trick.
I think it's safe to say now. I think now that I've explained myself and you've explained us, I think it's safe to say that we need to tackle the Old Testament verses. We need to get into them now. We really need to dig in. And so I think I can't meet with you on Father's Day, but
next couple of weeks, I think we're out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so there's something up.
Father's Day.
Yeah, next week is Father's Day. I think I can do it the 22nd, but I just wanted to. I think that you and I need to begin tackling. You pick the subject, whether it's rape or murder or pedophilia or whatever it may be. Pick it, and then let's tackle it together. We have to go inside the matrix, and then you can wrestle with me about that view of the matrix. I think that's where this is going to really come out to is, can you deconstruct my matrix?
No, and I think that's fair, and I think that's fine, and we can do that, and it'll be fun. But my question is, in some ways, why? And what I mean by that is, what we are going to be engaging on are verses from a book of mythology, because unless you can demonstrate by any evidence whatsoever that a God exists, what is the point of dialoguing about whether or not these verses make God good or not?
It's the only point of dialoguing is because I do believe that Jesus is real, and I do believe that Jesus is God. And so,
well, I know you believe that,
but if you want to engage with me and say, Rick, he's a rape murderer, and I say yes, from a modern perspective, we're looking at this. We talked about the word endorsement, and I'm agreeing with you about particular things, and I'm saying, but we have to look at the matrix. If you want to engage with me, then we have to get into it. That's what I'm trying to do.
No, I get that. I have it'll be fun anyway. No problem. Like we can go and look at, that'll be fun. And it's just great. We can look at the text. I guess what I'm asking is, you're reading.
It's not for me or you, obviously. It's not for me or you. It's going to be for those that watch, I suppose.
It's kind of for me. I guess what I'm asking is, what is the reason that you have to believe that this God even exists before we spend time looking at what this supposed God wrote? Is my question.
Because where you and I differ is that, like you were saying earlier about like a mentalist, a person that can give you words and then things can trick your mind or whatever. That is not what I think is going on. What I think is happening is that I was introduced to this and it began to well up inside me, and now it happens on its own. That's what I'm telling you. You can say it's a mental thing, that it's mentalism, and I'm saying, no, I don't think that. I think it's the Spirit of God. And if it's the Spirit of God and it attests to the words of Jesus, it links him back to Yahweh. Therefore, I'm forced to defend it now. And, and so if you argue this point with me over time and you prove to me that my matrix theory is ridiculous, and then I'm going to fall, then what's going to happen is I'm going to find out that I was really an awesome guy in the end.
Oh, well, I can already tell you that's going to be the end result.
But what I'm telling, I believe that I'm an awesome guy. I believe I'm an awesome guy, but I believe that Jesus has helped me become who I am. That's what I believe.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll do this. I think Jesus had nothing to do with it. I think you're just an awesome guy, and you have, because you're brainwashing, have credited it to somebody else when you should be fucking president. But whatever.
Jeez, I don't want. Forget it.
All right, whatever, man. I'll just tell you, the world would be a better place with Rick Welch at the top. But whatever, as long as you got rid of this God notion. But anyway, aside from that, yes, okay. So yes, that sounds fine. So starting in 2 weeks, next week's Father's Day, no show. 2 weeks. I'll pick the topic. It'll be one of those four.
Yeah. Will you give me a little bit of notice?
No, dude, of course. I'm not going to surprise you.
Because what I want to do is because I'd like to create like a presentation to be able to pull up on the screen so we can read it together and talk about it.
No, I think that's fair. So let's see. There's rape, pedophilia, murder, and slavery.
You and I'm telling you, man, it's like, I got to go, guys. I got to go talk about rape and murder. Like, that's what we're doing. Jeez. I just want you to come back down here and have some chicken, bro. That's what I'm ready,
dude. Like, bro, I mean, what people don't realize is off the screen, this shit doesn't matter. It's just, I just love hanging out with you. But like, this is important, so we're talking about it, so everybody can hear it. Hey, listen, if you're watching, we're about to end. So if you have any questions, throw them down quick because we're about to go off the show. Eastgate Adoptionist has been throughout the whole show. Let me see if there's anything important here that he asked.
Who is Eastgate Adoptionist?
I literally have no idea.
Is it a he or a she? Do we know?
I think it's a he. Okay. And I think I know who he is from the preterist group that we're a part of, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know, but he's always chasing me down with scientific facts, and I'm just like, dude, I don't know. See, I'm okay with I don't know. I like the answer I don't know, because if I don't know, I don't know. I don't like. It doesn't mean I don't know anything in life. It doesn't mean God. It just means I don't know.
Right.
I'm okay with that answer. So that's just where I'm at. But okay, see, he said, I mean, there's so many questions. I just don't know how much of this pertains. Let's see. Let's just run through this real quick because he's the only one asking questions. You tell me if we pass or answer, and we'll just move on because I don't know how. If you counted the cost of your old self, what purpose did it serve? Were you handed a completed tower?
I don't know.
Dude, I don't even know what that means. Did God save us from himself? Yes. That was the biblical story anyway, which is a very silly story. But okay, Rick, I'll give you a chance to answer because I think that's a very silly portion of the Bible. But go ahead, Rick.
Did God save us from himself? I mean, if everything happens within God, the whole narrative happens within him, doesn't it? It seems to be like God made a thing and then he's dealing and working with the thing. Is there a broader gate than one that says your future sins are forgiven?
I don't know what that means. Moving on. Did Jesus only have our past sins until joining him? Do you have an answer? I don't even know what that means. Do you have an answer for that?
I'm telling you what, Eastgate Adoptionist, you might be really smart, but you have got to work on these questions, man. I don't understand what you're saying.
Like, I agreed with Rick. I know you're smart.
You're very smart.
I've encountered him enough to know that he could probably bury me if it came to running intellectual exercises and proving. But
it's
dude,
just the questions are so obscure, and it's almost like you've connected the dots in your mind, and you've created these questions, and we don't have a baseline to go from. You need to treat me like I'm a 5-year-old when you ask me a question.
Right? Yeah. And also ask questions that pertain to what we're talking about. That also helps.
Right.
So, all right. Well, I got no other questions. Thank you all for watching. This was fun. Rick, as always, dude, thank you for being a part of this because you are taking a giant risk, obviously, coming on the Unraveler show, talking with an atheist. I know you're getting a lot of heat, but this is important. And I really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to dialogue about these things because one way or another, there are issues and problems and they need to be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, thanks for having me on your show, and it's a joy to get to spend time with you, and I appreciate the fact that you're allowing me to defend what it is that I believe.
Hey, we should all have that opportunity, shouldn't we?
Yep.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. We will see you in 2 weeks. Rick, I look forward to our next visit, buddy.
Yeah, man. See ya.